I had the chance to sit down with Premier Brad Wall for our year-end interview to get a sense of how his time in office was in the last 12 months. He's the man that needs no introduction, the Premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall. Mr. Wall, thank you for speaking with me today.
Thank you.
Well, first things first, the Saskatchewan Roughriders won the Grey Cup in Saskatchewan.
They did.
Thrill of a lifetime for so many Rider fans, and really it was interesting to see you, sort of casual edition of Brad Wall, enjoy the festivities alongside of so many Rider fans. What was it like for you to be out there in the masses as a fan?
You know, well, I am a fan, and so what a great Christmas present for the whole province to get about a month early. It was remarkable for all of Rider Nation. Obviously the stadium was full, but people were gathered around their televisions like they are for every game, but obviously in greater numbers. And it's a storybook finish to host it, to have them in it, and sort of they had to fight their way in it, win the semi-final, win the Western Final in Calgary, tough game, and then come out here and really dominate in the Grey Cup was great. I think, by the way, the extra bonus Christmas gift from the Riders was that it wasn't a very close game, because I'm not sure we have enough defibrillators in the province to manage a really
it was
tight
nice that it
overtime
wasn't a heart-stopping finish, absolutely.
Right.
All right, so November comes to an end, the fun's over, we move into December, and we learn Potash Corp is laying off hundreds of workers, 440 here in Saskatchewan. How do you try to balance the needs of big business in this province with the needs of the people who want to call this province home and make a life for themselves here? It seems that that's sometimes two sides of a coin that don't always have the same interests.
They mostly do have the same interests, because in order for us to provide the economic opportunities for families to move here, to stay here, we need all sizes of businesses to be investing, including the large companies, including companies like Potash Corp, who've been good corporate citizens for a very long time. You know, the other news in all of this is that we need to be able to respond rapidly to those who've been laid off, and we've been doing that. Although this will air much later, even while we're chatting, meetings are going to happen in Lanigan with our rapid response unit and those who've been laid off to explore all their rights, first of all, in terms of the layoff, but also with some job offers in hand, because we've seen a strong economy come forward with opportunities. The other thing quickly to remember is that we're more than just potash. In fact, potash, of all of the revenues of government, accounts for only 3.5%, potash royalties. Oil, for example, about 1.3 billion, and now potash around 400 million. So that's the difference. Also, we have a stronger, more diversified economy. We have seen actually a net loss in natural resource jobs year over year, but our overall number has gained very significantly. More jobs created because of strength in, well, the manufacturing sector, jobs created there, a strength in the export side of things, in agriculture, and in research and development, the innovation side. So, you know, this is a diversified economy, and we're very hopeful that those who have been laid off are going to be able to find some opportunities.
Absolutely. Talking about money, the provincial auditor just came out with a criticism that we see every year, and I know not just of your government, but of the previous NDP government as well, as far as how the accounting practices are handled. And I understand that the finance minister explained that it's essentially a difference in opinion on how the accounting should be done. But when there's such a substantial difference between what the amount of money, the surplus that your government accounts for, and the deficit that the auditor suggests is the reality, can you honestly say that there is no way down the line that this is going to come back to haunt taxpayers, that this is really an okay way to conduct your accounting?
A couple of points. First of all, we do agree with the auditor on the summary financial statements for the province, that they are in surplus. And of course, that's the mode of budgeting that the auditor would prefer. And now our opposition, though, you're right, when in government they had both the operating fund, the GRF, and the summary financial statements, the overall picture. They had both of them, but now they've changed their position to be just summary. So were we to do that, the auditor and the opposition and the government would all be in agreement that we are in a surplus position, and the auditor is not qualifying her opinion on that. That, you know, that's exactly the case today. But on the operating side of the ledger, that operating budget, sort of that household checking account or the business operating account, we do have differences. The auditor, for example, believes that pensions should be in there. We think that's more of a long-term prospect. That's why we included in the overall summaries. But the operating account for us, the general revenue fund, is just that: money in to operate the government and money out. And on that count, we believe we're in a balance. And so did previous governments, as you've noted. I will say this. The auditor also said she doesn't agree that we seem to focus too much on the GRF, that operating account, and not enough on the overall picture, that summary financial statement should be the big part of our budgeting. we're going to look at that recommendation with a view to possibly seeing that change in this spring when the budget comes out. However, we're always going to report on that operating budget. We think we should, because families understand that. That's how we, that's the operating account, and so do businesses. And people should know that that's in balance as well, that the long-term, the big picture piece is in balance, but that operating account, money in and money out, should also be in balance. So we're not borrowing to sustain any spending. And by the way, that is the case today. Notwithstanding the reports, we are not borrowing to do any of the operational funding of the government of Saskatchewan.
This time last year when we spoke, we talked a little bit about the importance of creating a better situation for Aboriginal youth to get the education they need to contribute to society in a really meaningful way as our province grows and moves forward in the years to come. What do you think your government has accomplished in trying to attain that goal in the past year?
Well, we've moved ahead with the recommendations of the Joint Task Force, and you'll be hearing more from us here in the new year about some, by the way, the Joint Task Force was a partnership we had with the FSIN and other those involved in education to try to close the gap in terms of educational outcomes, non-Aboriginal versus Aboriginal, to try to improve completion rates, graduation rates. And we found a few pilots that have worked very well right here in Saskatchewan in terms of dealing with those issues and seeing the closing of those gaps. We need to now bring those across the province to sort of export them beyond where they've been piloted, and you're going to see that happening. We see some hopeful numbers coming forward. I think in the last 6 months or so, month over month, we've seen a decline in Aboriginal unemployment. We've also seen in Saskatchewan, in terms of the youth employment numbers, this is all youth, that our youth unemployment, I think, is around 6%, even though our overall rate's 4%. But I think it's almost half of the national average. So there are more opportunities here for youth, but this is a top issue, because even before we go outside the province to try to find people to help us with the labor shortage, we need to fully engage Saskatchewan people. And if Aboriginal people are unemployed at a higher rate than non-Aboriginal, it's not acceptable. That's why you're going to see us move forward with things like increased funding for the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technology, where we've already increased their funding by 48% since 2007.
You continue to enjoy really almost unprecedented popularity as a premier in this province and nationwide as well. When you look at your career going forward, how far do you see the future, and where does your career take you as a politician?
Well, first of all, I always note that our government has had, we've had good luck. We've had some good fortune, and timing is important in politics. I think it's important for governments to acknowledge that, and also to acknowledge that the economic strength we see in the province is not because of the government. And by the way, that might be the origin of whatever popularity exists, but it comes from external factors. It comes from the people of Saskatchewan. It comes from companies, big and small, like we've talked about off the top. So full credit there, first of all, and to acknowledge some good fortune we've had. And to answer your question directly, we have objectives set for the rest of this term of government, and then we'll campaign, and I have every intention of campaigning again on a new set of objectives that fit with our long-term goals in the growth plan, because you should have a longer-term vision than the next election. So that's the direct answer to your question.
So right now you're not thinking beyond provincial politics?
No, I'm really not. I think I've heard this question before. Are you interested in a federal job? I think they should be asking federal politicians, maybe even including the Prime Minister, the best job in Canada is to be Premier of Saskatchewan. They should all be wanting this job.
When you look back at the past year, what do you think the most meaningful work you've accomplished is?
Our continued work with those who are most vulnerable. We've made a lot of promises and worked hard to keep them in terms of those who have intellectual disabilities, for example. And I'm proud when we see continued progress there. We've implemented something called SED, the Saskatchewan Assured Income for Disabilities program, which provides not just support outside what used to be social assistance, a new definition of support for those, something they'd asked for, the sector had asked for, but also increases in those supports so there can be greater independence. Plus, there was a wait list we've eliminated, and we're working on keeping it at zero with work to be done. A wait list of people with intellectual disabilities who wanted the dignity of a home, who were waiting for a place to live when we took office. And so we made a bit more progress down that road, and there were many things that government did. But that's a moment of pride. We need to get the big things right in government, but there's specific issues we need to always be mindful of too that people are dealing with. And so the issue of the suburban for the Morris family, Alison Morris there in southeast Saskatchewan. Credit the federal minister that made the right decision, but we sort of got involved in that one because we thought it might be, maybe we could help.
Right.
And credit to her and the family. They actually did most of the heavy lifting, championing their own cause. But when you make a little progress on those, what some might call the individual issues, sometimes that's as rewarding as paying down debt or some big program you announce.
It feels nice. Well, all the best in the new year, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Happy New Year. Thank you.